I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, really proved myself, they'd finally see me for more than just the youngest in the room. More than the only daughter. I thought they'd see me as someone worthy of carrying on the family legacy. My name is Olivia Bailey. If the name sounds familiar, it's probably because of Bailey & Sons, the once famous luxury home design firm that made its mark along the East Coast. What most people don't realize is that the Sons in the company name wasn't just clever branding, it was a message. Quiet, but powerful. It meant this empire belonged to the men. As a child, I constantly trailed behind my father and older brothers on job sites and in model homes. While they held blueprints and made decisions, I was given clipboards and coffee runs. My ideas were often met with polite nods or condescending smiles. Ambitious, they'd call me, like I was a puppy trying to climb a staircase, eager but not to be taken seriously. Still, I didn't complain. I took on every internship, accepted every late-night shift, and worked every low-level job they handed me. I read contracts cover to cover, analyzed market trends, and knew the company's financials better than the CFO. By 26, I had an MBA, something no one else in the family had. By 27, I was managing entire regional projects. But titles are meaningless when no one believes you've earned them. When I first brought up succession planning during a board meeting, suggesting we begin preparing for future leadership, my father didn't even let me finish. "You're not one of us, Olivia," he said loudly, his voice stopping the room cold. I blinked, stunned. "Excuse me?" He didn't look up. He just kept flipping through his notes like I wasn't even there. "This business was built by men. It's run by men. You're talented, yes, but this isn't your place. You don't have the instinct." My oldest brother chuckled across the table. My mother stared at her hands. No one spoke up for me. Not even my uncle, who had privately told me more than once that I was the best shot this company had for a real future. "You're too emotional," my father added as if he was offering a helpful critique. "You care too much about people, not enough about the bottom line. That's not leadership, Olivia. That's sentiment." I swallowed my pride. That meeting was supposed to be a milestone. I had spent weeks preparing a detailed 7-year growth plan, marketing strategy, and an expansion proposal for 4 new markets. But all they saw was a little girl playing dress-up at the big boys' table. Later that evening, I sat alone in the office I technically ran but wasn't officially given the title for. My father walked in without knocking. "You know," he said casually, "your brothers aren't perfect, but they understand what it means to carry the Bailey name. You've always been more of a dreamer." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. "You mean someone with vision?" He narrowed his eyes. "No, I mean someone who thinks having ideas is the same thing as having power." He looked at me like I was nothing. "You were never the smart one. You just worked harder to make up for it." Then he left. Just like that. But that line stayed with me. "Pathetic girl. You were never the smart one." He meant it as an insult. But, to me, it became fuel. I sat in the quiet of the office, staring at my reflection on the dark screen of my laptop. The room was cold and dim, but for once, I didn't feel like crying. I felt wide awake, clearer than I had in a long time. If they didn't want to make space for me at their table, then so be it. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fight for scraps anymore. I would walk away and build something better. Something they couldn't ignore. One day, they'd look back and regret ever underestimating me. That moment, though they didn't realize it, was the last time they would speak to me like I didn't belong. They had written me off, but I had already started writing a story of my own. You'd think after everything my father said, I'd finally give up and leave quietly. Maybe I should have. But a small part of me still believed that if I could prove myself, just one more time, with something undeniably strong, they'd finally see me. So I did what I had always done. I worked hard. I spent weeks developing a business proposal that could have launched Bailey & Sons into the future. I researched market trends, studied rising demographics, and followed digital shifts. I found an untapped opportunity: eco-friendly luxury homes with integrated smart technology. It was the next wave, and no one on the East Coast was doing it right yet. We could be the first. We could lead. I built everything from scratch, branding, projections, even mock-ups. I tapped into my MBA network for feedback and advice. I secured a presentation room at headquarters and sent formal invites to the executive team. I still remember how my hands trembled as I clicked through each slide. I remember the silence. No one made eye contact. And then came my father's smile, not proud, not amused, just that closed-mouth smirk he gave people who didn't know their place. When I finished, the room went still. I turned to my brothers. They leaned back in their chairs like they were waiting for dessert. My uncle yawned, completely disengaged. Then my father spoke. "Are you done?" he asked. I nodded. He sighed, then turned to Justin, my oldest brother. "You want to explain to your sister why that idea would bankrupt us in a year?" Justin laughed. "Olivia, no offense, but this isn't grad school. You can't just toss buzzwords into a slideshow and call it a plan. Smart homes? Green buildings? Who exactly do you think we're selling to Elon Musk?" The room chuckled. But I wasn't joking. "The numbers don't lie," I said, my heart racing. "My instinct does," my father cut in. "And it tells me this is just a vanity project. If you want to play CEO, fine. But not here. This is a business, not your sandbox." He stood up. "You want to build something? Go ahead. Start your own company. See how far that gets you. But don't come in here acting like you're one of us, because you're not. You never were." That phrase, "not one of us," hit harder than anything else. I looked around, waiting for someone to say something. Anything. But all I saw were smirks and sideways glances. My mother wasn't even there. She rarely came to meetings anymore. I quietly gathered my things. As I reached the door, my younger brother Raymond leaned forward with a smirk. "Hey, if it doesn't work out, I heard an interior design firm is hiring. You could help them pick out curtains." Laughter followed me as I walked out, but I didn't look back. Because right then I knew they may have shut me out of their world, but I was going to build my own, and this time they wouldn't be invited. Just like that, I knew this wasn't my family anymore, not in the way that counted. I wasn't their daughter, their sister, or even their colleague. I was just someone carrying their last name, like a label I didn't deserve. I didn't cry in front of them. But once I got home, I broke. The pain, the anger, the shame, it all came crashing down in waves. Years of being ignored, pushed aside, and told to be grateful for whatever little they gave me. Years of being made to feel small. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn every bridge behind me. But I didn't. Instead, I packed a bag. And the next morning, I left, quietly, without saying a word. I walked away from their expectations, from a legacy that had never been mine to carry. I left the boardroom where I was never truly welcome. I stepped into the unknown. I moved to a new city where no one knew who I was. Where I wasn't Janet Bailey, the odd one out in a powerful family. I was just Janet, a woman with a plan, a vision, and nothing left to lose. I rented a small apartment above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and warm bread every morning. And there, at a tiny desk with my old laptop, I opened a blank document. No logo. No pressure. Just me. The beginning of something they'd never see coming. Being underestimated has a strange kind of power. When no one's watching, you can build without limits. No expectations. No noise. Just freedom. In that cramped apartment with peeling paint and a water heater that made strange noises, I began building something that would one day change everything. I didn't have their money, but I had something better, clarity. No more proving myself. No more waiting for approval. I was done with all of that. I named the company Lamora Designs. It was inspired by a faint star, one that's hard to see, but strong and steady. That's how I saw myself. Quiet, often overlooked, but capable of something big. The early days were rough. I blew through my savings fast. I lived on instant noodles and barely slept. I pitched my services to anyone who would listen, small builders, boutique developers, and even homeowners working on their dream spaces. Most said no, but a few said yes, and I treated those early projects like million-dollar deals. I poured everything into them. I offered smart, eco-friendly designs for clients who wanted modern, sustainable homes. It was a small niche, but the demand was real. I did it all: design, sourcing materials, managing contractors. I wore every hat because failure simply wasn't an option. I didn't just want to succeed, I wanted to do better than them, and I wanted to do it my way. Within a year, I had a team of 5, a small studio, and a growing list of clients. We weren't in the spotlight yet, but the right people were paying attention. Quietly, we were gaining traction. My family had no idea I was still in the game. They didn't realize that what I had started wasn't just a new design firm, it was direct competition. I kept a close eye on Bailey and Sons. That wasn't hard. They were still making headlines, still acting like they owned the market. But they hadn't changed. They were stuck in old ways, ignoring how quickly the world was shifting. They were coasting on their name while the future moved on without them. So I got smart. I hired a former marketing lead from one of their rivals. Together, we built a brand that spoke directly to the clients my father had always ignored: young professionals, women-led households, and tech-savvy families who wanted homes that were smart, stylish, and sustainable. We made our style clean, simple, efficient, everything they weren't. And slowly, quietly, we started becoming the name people whispered about. I didn't stop when we launched. That was just the beginning. Quietly, we began bidding on mid-sized commercial projects, the same ones my father's company used to win effortlessly. But times had changed. Now, they were losing to a no-name firm with fresh ideas, faster turnarounds, and a hunger they hadn't seen coming. They had no clue who we were. I preferred it that way. Behind the scenes, I started building something bigger. I reached out to the overlooked talent, the project managers, designers, and assistants who had been ignored for too long. People like me, who were tired of being invisible. People who didn't just want a seat at the table, they wanted a table where they actually belonged. One by one, they joined me. Our little firm began to shine brighter, and still, no one noticed. About 20 months in, I found myself in a meeting with a high-profile client. They were choosing between Bailey and Sons and us. I had seen my father's proposal: safe, stiff, and outdated. Then they read ours. "Who are you?" the client asked, skimming through our pitch. "This is sharp. It's exciting. It's what I didn't know I needed." I just smiled. Someone with something to prove. We won the contract. And by the end of that quarter, we'd beaten Bailey and Sons on 4 major bids, each one dragging them further out of their comfort zone. Their name no longer had the weight it once did. Their reputation was slipping. And I was only getting started. Still, I stayed silent. I let them laugh, let them underestimate us. I let them believe I had disappeared. Because by the time they figured out who they were really up against, it would be too late. They say pride comes before a fall. But in my father's case, pride built the fall, brick by arrogant brick. From the outside, Bailey and Sons still looked untouchable. Glass towers, branded trucks, slick magazine ads. But I could see the cracks forming. The foundation was starting to rot. It began with a canceled resort project in New Hampshire, a deal they thought was locked in. The client cited creative differences, but I knew the truth. We'd pitched a better vision with smoother execution and lower costs. Then came the layoffs. First, a few junior designers. Then their longtime receptionist. Then a project lead I used to work with, someone who once would have never left. He called me, looking for a new place. I didn't brag. I just sent over a contract. Welcome to Aurora. The real hit came 7 months later. Bailey lost a massive government contract to retrofit public buildings for energy efficiency, a job they thought was theirs without question. They didn't even fight for it. They assumed the name alone would win. But the industry had shifted. Clients wanted innovation, adaptability, and purpose. We gave them all 3. Their press release tried to save face, blaming market shifts and competition. They never mentioned us, probably because they still didn't know who us was. But they felt us getting closer. I could tell by the panic in their branding, suddenly trendier, suddenly greener, suddenly trying too hard. They copied our hashtags, rushed out a tone-deaf sustainability campaign. I almost laughed. They were chasing a ghost. and the ghost was winning. Then came the rumors, mismanagement, family fights, financial strain. I didn't start them. I didn't need to. Truth leaks on its own and we just kept building. Fear has a way of creeping in quietly. My family was starting to panic, though no one would admit it out loud. One afternoon, I walked into a trade expo, not as a speaker or an exhibitor, just a quiet observer. I wanted to see how Bailey & Sons would present themselves now that they were no longer the biggest name in the room. Their booth was tucked near the back. It was smaller than usual, with fewer staff. My father wasn't there, but I saw Justin and Raymond trying to look confident, though the cracks showed. I kept my distance, close enough to observe, but far enough not to be recognized. A man approached their booth, a developer I had met just a few weeks earlier during a pitch. Justin handed him a brochure, smiling politely. The man glanced at it and said casually, "Oh, I'm already talking with Lamora. They're doing some amazing work." Justin stiffened. "Lamora," he repeated. The man nodded. "You should check them out. They're really onto something." He walked away. Justin's smile vanished like a dropped mask. He turned to Raymond and asked, "Who the hell is Lamora?" I smiled quietly to myself. The reckoning had begun. But the real turning point came on a rainy Thursday morning. I was in my office reviewing our expansion plans when my assistant knocked, looking pale. "There's something you need to see," she said, handing me a tablet. On the screen was an article. The headline read, "Bailey & Sons faces major lawsuit over delayed projects and contract breach." It wasn't just a hit piece. It was an exposé. Missed deadlines, ballooning budgets, disorganization, and even internal conflict, all laid bare. There were anonymous sources quoted, some of whom were likely now part of Lamora. My father's empire wasn't just struggling. It was bleeding. And now the world could smell it. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I closed the article, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled slowly. This was never about revenge. It was about truth, proving that I was never the naive, emotional girl they thought I was. I wasn't playing dress-up in their world. I was building something real. While they were busy laughing at me, I was building a future without them. What they didn't expect was that this future was about to go very public. Some moments divide your life into a before and after. For me, it happened on a quiet Monday morning. I was drinking black coffee, deep in mock-ups for a new eco-luxury development outside Portland when my assistant rushed in. "Janet," she said breathlessly, holding up her phone. "You're trending." I blinked. "What?" She turned the screen toward me. There it was, Olivia Bailey, youngest female CEO in the country revealed as founder of Lamora Designs. My heart stopped. It wasn't just a niche article, it was everywhere. Forbes, Business Insider. Even morning talk shows were picking it up. One headline stood out above the rest. The ghost founder, Lamora's CEO, revealed to be the woman who outmaneuvered Bailey & Sons. I didn't need to read the article. I already knew the story they were telling. The girl pushed out of her family's company, underestimated, ridiculed for dreaming big, and now, the CEO of a booming design firm, taking the industry by storm. There were quotes from old coworkers, clips from a private keynote I gave, and photos of me in front of Lamora's newest headquarters, sleek, minimal, and everything Bailey & Sons had failed to become. Then came the finishing touch, a side-by-side comparison of their latest losses and our recent wins. It wasn't subtle. The media had drawn the lines for us. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Emails poured in. Congratulations from investors, journalists, and even people I hadn't heard from in years. The world had learned my name, and so had they. The message that hit me the hardest didn't come from the media, investors, or old colleagues. It came from my mother. Just one sentence. "Your father saw the news. He hasn't spoken in an hour." I stared at my screen, not out of guilt, and not even with satisfaction. Just silence. For years, he had told me I wasn't one of them. And for years, I believed that proving him wrong would somehow heal something in me. But in that moment, while the world celebrated everything he tried to bury, I realized something that changed everything. I didn't need his approval anymore. Later that same day, my publicist called. A prime-time interview has been requested. National coverage. Major network. Do you want to do it? She asked. I paused. I hadn't built L'Amoura to be seen. I built it to be free. But maybe now it was time to speak. I nodded. Let's do it. 5 days later, the interview aired. I wore a navy suit, simple, elegant, no logos, no agenda. No revenge speech. Just presence. The host opened with the story of L'Amoura's quiet rise, how a company with no legacy name became a force in eco-luxury real estate in less than 6 years. Then came the question everyone had been waiting for. Is it true you're the daughter of Eric Bailey? I smiled softly. Yes. Why hide it? She asked. I didn't hide it, I replied. I just stopped apologizing for not being welcome. She blinked, caught off guard. And now you've built a company that outperformed theirs. It's not about outperforming, I said, though we both knew it was. It's about building something that reflects who I am and giving others the chance to do the same. The interview ended with a standing ovation from the live audience. That night, L'Amoura's website crashed from the flood of traffic. We received over 285 partnership inquiries. Our stock jumped 17% in just 29 hours. Investors started whispering about global expansion. But while the world cheered my name, one place stayed quiet. The Bailey family group chat. Still active. Still there. But not a single message. No sarcastic replies. No laughing emojis. Just silence. Finally, a message popped up. From Justin, you used us. I didn't respond. Not then. What was there to say? They had used my silence to pretend I didn't exist. Now the world knew better. The announcement hadn't changed everything because it made me powerful. It changed everything because it forced them to see what they had refused to see for so long. Me. Olivia Bailey. The one they said would never lead. Never succeed. Just a dreamer, destined to fade. But now I was the youngest female CEO in the country. And my next chapter was about to begin. It started with a letter. A crisp ivory envelope, embossed in gold. Bailey Family Annual Reunion, Saturday at 5 p.m. Hosted at the estate. No note, no apology, just tradition. I stared at it for a long time. 6 years ago, they laughed me out of boardrooms. Told me I didn't belong. Called me pathetic. Now, they were inviting me back into the very house where I had always felt like a guest, never a legacy. I hadn't stepped foot there since the day I walked away. But this year, I said yes. Not for them, for me. That Saturday, I pulled up to the estate gates in a sleek black Rolls-Royce. The model? Ghost fitting for the girl they tried to forget. They once tried to erase me. But the moment the guard saw my face, recognition lit up his eyes. Without hesitation, he lifted the gate. The long driveway was lined with luxury, BMWs, Audis, and a classic Bentley. But mine stood alone. A single Rolls-Royce, gleaming with quiet power. I stepped out slowly, dressed in an ivory suit. No flashy logos, no need for drama, just timeless elegance. The kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. As I walked toward the grand entrance, the noise around me began to dim. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. They saw me, finally. But no one knew what to say. Inside, I walked through the foyer like I had always belonged there. Because I did. Whether they accepted it or not. My mother was the first to approach. Her eyes softened, and for a brief moment, I saw something in them. Maybe regret. You look incredible, she whispered. Thank you, I said, then leaned in. Let's not pretend. She gave a small, weary smile. Fair enough. The party carried on. Familiar faces filled the room. Cousins, uncles, old family friends. Near the fireplace, my brothers froze as they saw me. Justin's jaw tightened. Raymond's eyes dropped to my wrist, then to the keys in my hand. I didn't stop for them. Instead, I walked through the house straight to the back patio, where my father stood alone. He looked out across the lawn like a ruler staring at what was left of his fading empire. When he heard my footsteps, he turned, and for the first time in my life, Eric Bailey looked small. You came, he said, his voice softer than I remembered. I did. He studied me. You've made quite a name for yourself. I said nothing. He looked away, struggling. Janet, I may have been wrong. That nearly made me laugh. May have been? I didn't come for apologies, I said calmly. I came for closure. He turned toward me again. The company is struggling. Your brothers, he stopped himself. We could use your help. I met his eyes, calm, clear. Not angry. Just done. You told me I'd never be the smart one, I said softly. Just a foolish girl with too many ideas and no power. He didn't deny it. I glanced back toward the house, the party, the crumbling legacy. And now you want my help? His lips parted, but I cut him off. I didn't come to save you, Dad. I built something without you. While you mocked me, I created. While you doubted me, I became everything you said I'd never be. He looked at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. Good, I said, turning to leave. But before I walked away, I looked over my shoulder one last time. You were right about one thing, I told him. I'm nothing like you. And thank God for that. As I walked back through the house, the crowd parted like water. There were whispers and a few forced smiles, but none of it mattered. I wasn't there to be admired. I had nothing left to prove. I had already won. Outside, the Rolls-Royce shimmered in the late afternoon sun. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and looked back, not at the house, but at the little girl I once was. The one who had begged to be seen, and I smiled. Because she wasn't begging anymore. She was leading. From that moment forward, the world would never forget her name, Janet Bailey. No longer the outsider. No longer the overlooked. No longer the girl they tried to silence and dismiss. She became the woman who changed the narrative so that others like her would never be erased again.